You know, one way to think of a crazy Christian is to think back to what St. Paul said in Romans 12. Present yourselves as a living sacrifice to God. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed. A crazy Christian is someone whose life is not dominated by being conformed to the culture and its ethos and its intentions, but one who is transformed or being formed more closely into the image of Jesus the Christ. I was a young priest in Winston-Salem. This is back in the 70s. And in my first church, actually, I was deacon in charge. And I was a transitional deacon at the time. And I was sitting in my office. It was kind of like one of the first days there. And the church had a little daycare center that was run by the Northwest Child Development. And so I had spoken with the kids and introduced myself to the teachers. And I was sitting in my office. And at some point in the morning, and this is the first day I was there, a little boy came down the hall to go to the bathroom. The bathrooms were right across from my office. Well, he stopped before he went in the bathroom, and he looked in my office, and I said hello, and he said hello. And he looked at me, and he asked, "Are you God?" And, you know, I mean, for a second, it kind of took me back. And so I gave what I thought was a creative answer because I had just graduated from seminary, and I knew everything. And so I responded immediately, "No, I'm not God, but I work for him," which actually I thought was a pretty good answer. He seemed satisfied. He went on to the bathroom, went back to the class. Well, later on, another kid comes down. I can't remember if it was a boy or a girl now, and asked the same question. I gave the same answer. And then by the end of the morning, probably about 11:30, when they were taking the kids outside to play, the kids came by and they all kind of waved, "Good morning, God. Hello, God. How are you, God?" Now, I was kind of embarrassed and kind of wondered, you know, I didn't want the teachers thinking that I had some issues, but I thought about that, and I have thought about it in the years since. And you know what? Maybe those children ought to think I'm God, which is to say, now, I have no messianic confusion going on, but maybe the world ought to look at us and our lives as followers of Jesus of Nazareth and see his life and the light of his life and the love of his life so vivid in us that when they see us, they actually see him. That's the nature of a life that is being conformed and continually formed and therefore transformed into the image and the likeness of Jesus of Nazareth. And when that happens, you will be out of step very often with the culture and society. When that happens, you will not always be conforming to the dictates and the whims and the fads and the fashions of society. When that happens and you are different, which is also, I think, a definition of holiness, when you are different, you may well be labeled as crazy by this or any other society. In the first chapter of Corinthians, St. Paul says the foolishness of God is wiser than people. Crazy Christians are those who are living the foolishness of God. Remember, St. Paul says the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved, it is the power of God unto salvation. That's the kind of folly and foolishness and craziness that I'm talking about. And so paradoxically, while it seems crazy, it in fact is the ultimate sanity. Much in the world, and much in the world is good and blessed and holy and wonderful and lovely. I mean, we in the Anglican tradition place great emphasis on the incarnation, that God loves our humanity, loves our materiality so much that God would enter the world and become a part of that material. So I'm not saying that the material is bad or that the world is bad. It's not. But very often the direction that we take in our societies and in our cultures is driven by unenlightened and uninspired self-interest. And I mean, that's sin. That's what we call sin. And that is the root of all of the destructive impulses, that bring about, hatreds and bigotries and prejudices and people hurting each other. That's the kind of stuff that very often seems to be normal in the world. And I would submit that from a Christian perspective, and I suspect for people of goodwill and of many faiths, that is actually insane. That unenlightened self-interest, self-will, arrogance, pride, what we call sin, it is self-destructive in the long run. It is not self-interest. It is self-destructive.